Hekate revels in the power of solitude. When you know how to be alone, when you are not just comfortable in your own company, but love being in your own company, that is when you get access to your deepest powers. By unlocking the gate of overwhelm with the key of solitude, you will start to see magic unfold all around you. Hello lovelies, welcome back to Squeaky's Cauldron, or welcome if this is your first time here. I'm your host, Sarah Evergreen. Today we are going to be talking about the Gate of Overwhelm and the Key of Solitude in the series on Hekate's keys. But before we start that, as always with my episodes on Hekate, I'm going to be offering an opening prayer to get us into the space and invite Hekate to be with us. If this is not your thing, totally cool, just skip forward a couple of minutes. If you do want to join me, I invite you to find yourself a comfortable spot. Allow your eyes to close if that works for you, or soften your gaze if that is not comfortable. Hail Hekate, Queen of Witches. Our journeys are so blessed. Each key you grant us unlocks great power. Grateful we are for all your keys. The key of connection, which reminds us we are not alone. The key of solitude, in which we may come home to ourselves. The key of acceptance for that which we cannot change. The key of courage to face and overcome adversity. The key of desire, which brings us closer to you. The key of vision, so that we might move freely. The key of honesty, which brings us peace. The key of curiosity, so that we might live lives of truth and joy. And the key of devotion. Hekate, I live my life in service to you. Guide me. Make me ready. Illuminate my next right step. Help me to see more clearly and align more fully with my highest purpose and my highest self, so that I might better serve you, serve myself, and serve those around me. Aho. Thank you if you joined me, and if you didn't, thank you for honoring your own boundaries. On to the show. So first I want to start with the Gate of Overwhelm. What do I mean when I say this? This is a gate that we come up against. It's a block in our path that happens when we feel overwhelmed. This is when we have too much on our plate, or more likely, when what is on our plate is out of alignment with our souls. And the easiest way to get out of alignment with what your soul wants and what you're here to do is to listen to what other people tell you you're supposed to be doing. This is something that happens when we don't give ourselves enough time to be alone with our own thoughts and to honor ourselves. The Gate of Overwhelm can feel like anxiety. It can feel like depression. It often is accompanied by great feelings of heaviness and burden. When you want to sleep all the time, when it's very difficult to get out of bed, when facing the day ahead of you is just, it feels like too much. This is an indicator that you are encountering the Gate of Overwhelm. Often this will manifest as feeling stuck, being unable to do things, and what we normally call procrastination. But procrastination is not in and of itself a thing. It is a symptom of something deeper. It is often a symptom of fear. Fear that we're not going to be able to do the thing that we think we need to do in the right way. Or fear that we're wasting our time on the things that we are already doing. Things that maybe aren't in alignment with our highest purpose. When you're encountering this gate, you'll often feel a sense of disconnection from yourself. That feeling of not knowing what you want or where you want to go, and not being able to articulate your values and your priorities, or things become priorities based on how much time you spend on them that aren't actually priorities in your heart. This can often lead to turning to numbing vehicles like alcohol, drugs, social media doom scrolling, lots of TV, excess food, this kind of thing. But what this also ends up doing is numbing everything else too, because there's not a selective numbing process. When we numb the hard stuff, we numb all the good stuff too. There's a quote I saw recently that said something along the lines of, if you aren't crying all of your tears, you're not laughing all of your laughter. So how do we move through the gate of overwhelm? We use the key of solitude. The key of solitude unlocks the gate of overwhelm by giving us information about ourselves and by helping us to create a home within ourselves. For more on this idea of coming home to yourself, check out the last video that I put out where I go much deeper into this idea. So I'm just going to kind of touch on it here. Coming home to yourself means that you find the place within yourself where you are acting out of your values. It's acting within alignment to what is important to you, which requires knowing your values, first of all, and that requires getting quiet and being able to hear what your heart is telling you. And listen to what your body is telling you too, because our bodies give us so much messages about what is working for us and what isn't. I'll tell you a little story. A couple years ago, 3 years ago, I was working at a production shop doing jewelry, making jewelry, and I was working really, really hard. I enjoyed the work by and large, but the whole culture was overtime, do as much as you can, push yourself physically, do as much as you can for as long as you can. And what ended up coming out of that as a result of that kind of work environment, as well as a couple other things going on in my life, was that I developed a grapefruit-sized infection in my abdomen. And I went to the hospital, the emergency room, and I got admitted for over a week and then had months of recovery time after that because my body just said, no, we are not doing that anymore. And I'd been having gut pain for like 6 months intermittently before that. My body was telling me, hey, something's going on. And the same is true for all of us. It'll manifest different ways, absolutely. Sometimes it'll manifest as rashes. It can manifest as disturbed sleep. I've seen this disconnection from self come out as peripheral neuropathy. People lose feeling in their feet or legs or hands. It comes out as, of course, the more mental and emotional distress that we experience around depression and anxiety. Like, all of these are cues that something isn't working right, that we're doing something or engaging in life in a particular way that is hurting our souls. And so in order to be able to listen to that, we have to get away from all of the voices around us, from everything, from just other people's energy even, because we can pick up on that, especially if you are sensitive, if you are working on a spiritual path, if you're dedicating yourself to becoming more spiritually enlightened or engaged, rather. I think that's a better word for it. Then it becomes easier and easier to pick up on things that other people are sending our ways. And when we don't give ourselves enough time, when you don't give yourself enough time in solitude, then you just end up carrying around all of this stuff from other people, and it will have an impact on your life, on your body, on how you feel. So we need the solitude. We need to get away to the mountains, so to speak, and be by ourselves. Hekate works in this space so often. She is the queen of liminal spaces, and that liminal space puts us in a kind of solitude just as a matter of course. When we are going from an ending to the new beginning, there are lots of things that we don't have access to anymore. For example, after a divorce and before another relationship. Ideally, there will be some space there. And in that space, you have lost your previous partner. You may have lost some friends. You've certainly lost the identity of being this person's partner. And in that space, in that solitude that's just kind of baked into the liminal space, Hekate arrives. And when we specifically, intentionally put ourselves in that place, the messages come through. I can guarantee from personal experience that the more you are intentional about creating a nurturing solitude practice, the more you will hear from Hekate and other spirits and deities who want to work with you. So solitude is the act of intentional aloneness, and this requires boundaries. It requires both internal and external boundaries, or rather, boundaries that relate to how you are behaving towards yourself and how you are choosing to engage with other people. So for example, an internal boundary around this would be, I choose to wake up half an hour early so that I can meditate or spend time reading or just being by myself in the house before the rest of the house wakes up. An external boundary would be saying, I am choosing to tell this person that I only have, 45 minutes to have lunch with them rather than the hour and a half that we usually have, so that I can take that time and go do something that is building this solitude practice for me. And of course, this is going to be different for everyone. Some people will need a lot more work or focus rather on their boundaries with themselves, and some people will need to work more on boundaries with other people. Neither of those is inherently better or worse than the other. It's just being able to recognize where you are coming from. And honestly, most of us can use work with both internal and external boundaries. I know I'm not perfect. We're all a work in progress, though. You are a beautiful work in progress, and every little bit of progress that you can make to move the needle in the direction that you want to go, that's a success and should 100% be celebrated. Speaking of successes, if you are liking this episode, please drop a like down below. I really appreciate it, and it helps out the channel so much, being able to reach a wider audience and get more people this information, which I think is important. Also, if this is your first time here, welcome. This is a channel for people who are seekers, people who are looking to dive deeper into their spirituality, particularly around witchcraft and Christianity and the melding of those two. So if you aren't already, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Some things to remember when you are beginning to practice the key of solitude. Solitude is different than being lonely. However, they might, from the outside, look very, very similar. And if you find yourself consistently in a place of being lonely, A, check out the video on the key of connection that I put out, and B, see what you can do to transmute that from loneliness into intentional solitude. This is, by and large, a perspective shift. Going from this is happening to me to I choose this. I am volunteering to be in this space and to see what goodness I can make from it. And that kind of perspective shift is going to be powerful, not just in this practice, but across the board. If you can see that what seems to be happening to you is actually an opportunity for you to expand yourself, grow, even just to experience emotions that are coming up around this thing, because you're human, and that's one of the things we're here to do, is experience all of our emotions. Having that shift in perspective can be really powerful and open up a lot of doors. As I talk about in the video, Coming Home to Yourself, this practice can feel pretty triggering, especially if you are not used to being alone, or if being alone has meant certain things to you, like abandonment or rejection. Actively choosing to be alone, actively moving into the space of solitude can bring up a lot. It can bring up shame about being alone. It can bring up guilt around setting boundaries. Just be prepared for that and know that when these things come up, it's not because there's something wrong with you, and it's not because there's something wrong with the practice. It's because you are actively deconditioning from a perspective, from an approach to life that has been sold to you, to us, to all of us, that we have to be active all the time. We have to be 100% connected all the time, or there's something wrong with us. There's not. You're just learning to be alone. And the ability to be alone, the ability to be in solitude and revel in solitude alongside Hekate is it's dangerously powerful. If you can say, I would rather be by myself than be around a person or around a situation that is asking me to be smaller, that is asking me to dim my light, if you can make that choice actively and consistently, then that means that these things have less and less power over you. And remember, these keys all work together. So balance the key of solitude with the key of connection. They go hand in hand. You need both. You need to interact with the world. You need to be, you are interconnected. You can't get away from that. And recognizing that and allowing yourself to be in that space, super important. Also, recognizing that you need to be in your space and ground home in yourself and make those boundaries for yourself, very important. There's a balance here. There's a dance between this is a practice. This is something that you're not going to necessarily get right away, that might feel uncomfortable. But remember, continue to practice. Practice is not perfect. Practice is exactly that. It's practice. It's where we get to try things out and experiment and see how they feel. And if it doesn't feel right, past the discomfort, past the initial, oh God, this is different. If it doesn't feel right, you can shift your approach, because there are many ways to approach solitude. It's not just going off into the woods to be in a cabin by yourself. That's not going to work for everyone, both in terms of practicality and in terms of what that person needs for their own solitude practice. If you want to go deeper with this, working with boundaries, working with Hekate, just generally bringing more magic into your life, your business, your relationships, check out the link in my description for my coaching offers and set up a discovery call today. I would love to hear from you. Now I've got a mundane practice and a magical practice for you. The mundane practice might not come as a surprise, and it might make you a little bit annoyed, but it's meditation. Meditation. Of course, meditation is not just sitting silently in one place. Check out my video on meditation and different techniques. But I will say meditation is key. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Meditation allows us space. It allows us to take a step back from our thoughts so that we can see that what we're thinking is not us. It's a part of us, it's something we're experiencing, but it does not define us. When we fixate on a thought, we bring that into the world, and we bring that towards us as well. It's this kind of back and forth. And that is why it's so important to be able to get space between us and our thoughts, because they just kind of naturally loop without our consent. So when we give ourselves more space to explore those thoughts and to recognize them not as ourselves, we also give ourselves more space to change those thoughts and to shift them. For meditation, I recommend aiming for every day would be great. If you can fit in just like 10 minutes or more once a day, especially to start, even 5 minutes to start, starting with those small promises that I talk about in the last video, and just giving yourself a little bit of space. And then I also highly recommend taking one day a week and doing about 30 minutes to an hour's worth of whatever meditation works for you. And in this time, also telling the people around you, the people who might be affected by this change in your habits or schedule, let them know what you're doing and tell them that this space is important for you and that you need to take it. This is also part of the practice of solitude. It's that boundary thing. Allowing people the opportunity to support us too goes back to the key of connection. So you see, they're all intertwined. And if you're looking for a particular meditation to do, I am releasing a meditation with this video specifically about connecting to the key of solitude and to the home in yourself. So check that out. And on to the magical practice to cultivate solitude. You can find a written version of this on my website, squeakyscauldron.com. I think it might be easier to see it in black and white, but I'm going to walk you through it on this episode so you get a taste of what we're going for. To start with, if you have tarot cards, either pull out the Four of Pentacles or the Four of Swords. Both of these cards are great for setting boundaries, for having structure around yourself. The 4 is a natural number of structure, and it's like the 4 walls of a building, the 4 legs of a chair. You see what I'm getting at. The 4 elements. So the 4 of Pentacles is about creating boundaries with your resources. In the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you'll see a figure with a pentacle on the crown, a pentacle at the chest, and a pentacle underneath each foot. This is essentially blocking each of these energy channels so that this figure can have more control over what comes in and what goes out by the grace of having that protection. And the pentacles are about resources, money, time, environment. So if you need more support in that area, choose the 4 of Pentacles. Now, the 4 of Swords, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you'll see a sarcophagus with one of the swords on the bottom of the sarcophagus and 3 swords hanging point down above the sarcophagus. This card asks us to rest and pull back from all of the thoughts that are out there asking to get in. This figure has protected themselves with the sarcophagus, emblazoned with the sword. The sword is the symbol of communication, of ideas, of words. And by boxing themselves in, they are protecting themselves from the swords hanging above, that if they fall, they won't go through the box and into the figure. So this is a good card if you feel inundated by a lot of opinions, by a lot of news, by just generally a lot of noise on the outside, and you're having a hard time creating boundaries around that. Then to echo the cards, you'll want either 4 coins, 4 feathers, or 4 butter knives. So the coins are for the Pentacles card, and the feathers or the butter knives are for the Swords card. I know that it might not be easy to source 4 feathers at the drop of a hat, but I am guessing that you have 4 butter knives available to you. Now, do note that your butter knives are not going to be going back in the silverware drawer for a while, so keep that in mind when you're choosing which of those you want to go with. You'll also want a representation of yourself, whether that's an image, a sigil, your initials, any of those worked, maybe a tag lock such as a piece of hair or a clipped fingernail. And lastly, a black candle or a white candle if you don't have access to a black candle. To begin, you will cleanse the space, ground, and center. If you are not familiar with these, or if they're not already in your practice, do check out the episodes of Squeaky's Cauldron that I'm going to link in the show notes. Episodes 20 through 23 take you through the basic steps of any ritual. And the next step is to open your space, whether that is casting a circle, if that's in your practice, and then calling in Hekate to be with you. You can do this through the prayer that started out this episode, or you can just use your own language, whatever works for you, or to write your own invocation. The intention is the important part. Next, cleanse your tools and ingredients. When you're ready, place your representation on the ground and then arrange your coins, feathers, or butter knives around them in a perimeter. So envision this as exactly that, a perimeter, a way to create that space between you and the rest of the world. Light your candle, place it above the representation of yourself, so like in front of you, and then say what you're calling in. Really speak these words out loud. You can say something like, I have ample access to solitude and revel in the beauty of coming home to myself. Or you can use your own words. Or again, look at the posting of this spell on my website, and I'll have a couple other variations, including one that rhymes, if that's your bag. And then you'll repeat these words over and over again, maybe moving into the space of a chant, focusing on the energy of that feeling coming through your body and onto your representation. So seeing that flowing into that representation of you in the center. And then seeing the items that you've arranged around your representation acting as that protective barrier so that the energy goes in, but no other energy comes in and that energy does not flow outwards. And when the energy feels very strong to you, when you feel like you've built enough of it and poured enough of it into this representation of you, I want you to smack your hand down on top of it, sealing that energy in. And make a noise. That's gonna just like bring it all in and pack it tight into this little representation of you. Leave your hand there. Leave your hand on top of the representation of you. I feel like I'm saying that word a lot, but leave your hand on top of it until it feels like it's really nice and sealed. And then you'll do what I normally do in all of my spells, and that is to allow the candle to burn down while meditating on the intention of the spell. And you can either allow the candle to burn down all the way, or you can snuff it. I don't particularly have any strong beliefs around this idea that like if you snuff the candle before it's burnt all the way down, it won't work, the spell won't work. I don't think that's true. However, I do think that spending at least some time, focusing on the candle, focusing on my intention, and allowing that energy to simmer within the space can be really helpful in making the spell more powerful. Then when you're done, thank Hekate, thank her for coming into the space, and close your circle if you opened one, or do whatever you need to do to feel like you're drawing things to a close. And then you'll take that representation of yourself and ideally keep it near you in a wallet or the bottom of your shoe again. And then take the coins and feathers or butter knives, whatever you've used, and put them somewhere safe. Somewhere ideally near the place where you'll be spending time in solitude. Be your strongest champion, because you are the only person who really knows what you need. So you have to advocate for that for yourself. Solitude is an essential ingredient for even the most extroverted person's life. In order to hear yourself and your deities, you need to cultivate a space where you can be quiet, where you can be alone, so that those messages can come through clearly. Allow yourself to let go of the messages that the outside world is consistently trying to feed you. Inside of that new quiet, you truly have all you need. Let me know in the comments what your favorite solitude practices are, whether I've mentioned them in this video or there's something else entirely. I'd love to hear from you. And to get in touch with this key and start building your own solitude practice, check out this meditation on accessing Hekate's key of solitude. And until next time, my lovelies, as always, take care of yourselves and use your voice.